Hey everybody, Hoosier Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking episode 6 of season 4 of Arrow called Lost Souls. And this is another really nice, solid episode of the show. So let's just kind of get right into things. First of all, Felicity's mom is one of those characters who a little bit of her goes a long way. But to her credit, Felicity's mom is really a good character. She's really great for those very earnest, very heartfelt moments with her daughter, and the show uses her well. And here they used her exactly right. All right, Felicity did need some perspective from somebody, and her mom was a great person to give it to her. And I really loved how Donna said, I've never had someone look at me the way Oliver looks at you, and about how love is about finding yourself in another person, losing yourself in another person. And there is a lot of truth in that. So that made for a really nice, mother-daughter moment. And then when she and Oliver made up at the end, it was good. Now, is this happiness going to last? Come on, this is TV. Happy relationships don't last because, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, happiness is boring. Suffering is interesting. But yeah, so we'll see how that goes. But I also sort of like that we see that, it's not all wine and roses for Oliver and Felicity. Here, there's definitely some bickering, some back and forth, some mistakes made on both sides. And yet, they're mature people, and they come out through the end better for it. And yeah, it was definitely pretty hilarious to see that Felicity's lack of talent in the kitchen is apparently an inherited trait from her mom. And then, of course, you get that really hilarious reminder about how Felicity dyes her hair. That was a good one, and something that had been mentioned before. We even got to see her in college, although I kind of wonder if maybe that particular shade of hair was not her natural hair color. And maybe that's something to keep an eye on in terms of. Well, we're supposed to find out who Felicity's dad is this season, so don't go looking for a blonde guy because okay, she obviously does not get that blonde hair from her mom. Think, think, think. And then we got that kind of cool moment at the end with Donna and Quentin sort of just chatting in a bar. I don't know exactly whether or not this is really going to go anywhere, but it certainly could lead to some fun awkwardness between Laurel and Felicity down the road if anything seems to really develop out of this. But yeah, I think that kind of covers everything I had to say about Donna. But Felicity, I really loved how her sort of, guilt binge is so reminiscent of all the times we've seen Oliver sitting around, kicking himself, doing something stupid because he was feeling guilty over something that wasn't really his fault. Oliver's got enough stuff on his plate that genuinely is his fault. He doesn't need to go out looking for more. So yeah, and then it was definitely fun also sort of once again seeing more of Felicity bouncing off Curtis Holt. I guess Curtis is sort of slowly officially being drawn into being another member of the team. And sort of see him once again having to deal with the more action side of things. That was pretty cool, and I love how Felicity goes blah blah blah, and oh yeah, you also mentioned that you were an accomplished base jumper, and Curtis just goes, I have way too many hobbies. Plus his reaction to meeting Oliver is just like he's straight and you're married. He's straight and you're married. He's straight and you're married. Good stuff, man. Curtis continues to really just become a better and better character every episode that he turns up. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do with him because he's Curtis, I guess, is in kind of a way a character who seems like he's more suited to the Flash than Arrow, but he has that kind of energy. He would fit right in at Star Labs with Felicity, with Caitlin and Cisco. But having him here, that kind of breaks things up. It sort of is a nice way to bring in a little bit more less gloomy energy. But yeah, I totally want sometime down in the future to have Curtis, Cisco, and Caitlin be in the same room, preferably with Felicity and Barry there, and just like have these enormous mega nerds bouncing off of each other. It would be awesome, awesome stuff. Um, let's see. So we get to see Ray back, and hey, certainly can't complain about that. And I love how like him being captured by Damien Dark was just dumb luck. I like how they're like sometimes luck is just kind of another word for destiny. This is like, man, of all the people, huh? Ray. I mean, honestly, I was kind of wondering for a little bit during the episode if like Hive hadn't planned that, if that Ray's suit blowing up hadn't been something like their part of an attempt by them to kill him. But it's like, nope, just stupid bad luck on the part of Ray Palmer. Although he did survive. Kind of wonder where he was going to the bathroom while he was locked up in that little plastic thing, but yeah, sometimes it's better not to think about certain things, huh? Yes, but this is all really just a lot of part of the big setup for Legends of Tomorrow. So now Ray's back. He's sort of going to continue to pretend that he's dead until it's convenient for him to sort of come back to life, which is all well and good. And yeah, I think that that kind of covers anything I had to say about Ray. I did like that little speech they gave to Felicity about, hey, you've been doing a good job running Palmer Tech, and then she sort of mentions, yeah, Ray wasn't too thrilled that I sold his condo. Yeah, I can kind of see that. So let's see. Nothing really huge to say about Thea this episode. I don't really have any particular feelings about her one way or the other regarding this campaign manager guy. Just sort of scratching my head wondering, oh man, I just had a thought. So, we know that Felicity's dad, I mean, it's been said by the show's creators that Felicity's dad is going to turn up this season and he's going to be a bad guy. Alright, we know Felicity dyes her hair, and I think she's even mentioned that well, she's probably almost certainly not a natural redhead. That means her hair is naturally dark. So, bad guy, we know they're coming on the show, has dark hair. Who fits that bill? And who would be a really big deal for them to have as Felicity's dad? Also, think about this in relation to ties to the characters that are from the Green Arrow comics. Answer, and again, this is just theory on my part. It just crossed my mind while I was doing this. I'm going to submit as a possibility for the father of Felicity Smoke, the one and only Vandal Savage. Now, if you don't know, in the comics it's actually established that Vandal Savage was an ancestor of Roy Harper, not his father. Roy's father, well, it kind of varied a little bit in the comics, but the one I knew, he was like a forest ranger who died fighting a wildfire. But like Vandal Savage was in the distant past one of Roy's ancestors. So, let's say we take that away from Roy and give it to Felicity. Ooh, and especially if you know a little bit about that story where Roy found out Vandal Savage was one of his ancestors. Ooh. Oh, hot diggity. That sounds cool. Also, speaking of which, it sounds like from what Felicity's mom said that this wasn't some sort of a one-night stand with some guy and Felicity was the result. She mentioned she devoted her 20s to this person. So that would seem to indicate a somewhat dedicated relationship, which I admit does seem a bit at odds with Vandal Savage, but again, this is just me throwing out a theory that happened to pop into my head. Vandal Savage is not really the sort of long-term relationship sort of guy. But you never know. You never know. So, yeah, that kind of covers everything I had to say there. Nothing huge to say about Laurel this episode. It was just sort of nice seeing her with her sister. Now, Sarah had some cool stuff going on this episode. And it was definitely nice to see her back in action, but the bloodlust thing is not going so well, and this results in an innocent security guard being beaten senseless. Hopefully, Palmer Tech will quietly make a donation to help cover that guy's medical bills. And hopefully, that guard they pushed the shelf on was not seriously hurt, but hopefully he was knocked unconscious. Otherwise, he would have certainly heard them screaming "Sarah" over and over again. And this right after the whole we're making a big deal about giving Diggle a code name. Now, in the comics, the only character I'm aware who uses the name Spartan is a character from the Wildcats team, and well, they were part of Wildstorm, and then DC bought the rights to all of the Wildstorm characters, and they've since introduced some of the Wildstorm characters into the DC universe proper, like Caitlin Fairchild and Zealot, Grifter, Grunge. Yes, there's a character called Grunge. The character was created in like 1992. Okay, that's just kind of how things rolled back then. Oh yeah, Sarah Rainmaker. They brought her into the DC universe proper, if I remember correctly. And I'm all down for that. I was a big Wildstorm guy back in the 90s. I have a lot of good memories of those comics, but Diggle has basically nothing apart from being like a leader military type guy. He and the character Spartan from the comics have really nothing in common. So I have a feeling this is maybe just a kind of a coincidence. Nothing really more to be read into than that. Definitely did love that scene with Oliver and Dig hanging out in the Arrow Cave, or they might be calling it the Quiver. I think Green Arrow actually had this really hilarious conversation in the comics with Harley Quinn, where she's like, "The Arrow Cave? That's a stupid name. Why don't you call it the Quiver or something like that?" And Oliver was like, "You know what? That's actually a good idea. Why didn't I ever think of that?" But yeah, I definitely love that scene with them sitting around and they're like, "Man, let's have a drink." And Oliver's like, "Yeah, let's get some vodka." And Diggle's like, "Wuss, here, drink some whiskey." I kind of have to side with Oliver on that one. I much prefer vodka to whiskey, but I'm not really a big alcohol guy. And man, yeah. I don't want to. I have nothing further to say about whiskey there. Well, apart from if you're ever bored, don't try to alleviate your boredom with whiskey. You will regret it. Boy, did I learn that the hard way one time. Oh. So, yeah. Well, that's part of what being in your 20s is about, isn't it? Okay, so let's see. Who else do we have to talk about? Yeah, getting back to Sarah for a moment. Again, more Legends of Tomorrow setup. And it is a little disappointing that she's back this one episode and then she's gone. But again, Legends of Tomorrow. And I did like that they took a moment to sort of give a nod to her mom. I'm still hoping they'll be able to find a way to get Alex Kingston to pop up again, or even better, to have her appear on The Flash, because her character does live in Central City. Quentin. Nothing really huge to say about him this episode. We've already kind of talked about him a little bit. It was definitely fun seeing Oliver in the doghouse with Felicity. Gotta say that. And la di da di da. Oh yeah, we got to talk about good old Damien Darhk. Well, first of all, have you noticed just how incredibly petty this guy is? I mean, the slightest little, anything that he could possibly take offense at, he does, and then he acts like a big jerk about it. I mean, you could just sort of chalk this up to having him being alive for so long and having such tremendous power that anytime anybody annoys him, he can just. But still, it just makes him seem like this really, really petty guy. It's just like, dude, if you're like a centuries old sorcerer, can you maybe show a little more class than this? You're like some spoiled jerk rich kid who's mad because their parents didn't get them the right colored iPhone. Okay, whatever. But we get a real kicker here at the end. We get a good look at that crazy box of Damien Darhk's, and he's really excited about using a dwarf star, part of a dwarf star, as a power source. And again, that's in keeping with the atom's origin. When we get a look at that thing, it has this stuff on it. It looks like circuitry, and I'm not the only person out there who said, "Wait a minute, that looks like a mother box." And a mother box is this sort of crazy science gadget that is used primarily in the New Gods comics. And New Gods are, as the title entailed, like beings of almost godlike power. And the idea that they could possibly making some sort of reference to this on Arrow, that's pretty crazy. When they're usually doing stuff with the New Gods, it's usually like Superman or Justice League that usually kind of plays around with the New Gods. And the New Gods also has strong tie to the character of Darkseid, who is arguably the most powerful villain in the entire DC universe. Now, a lot of us folks were thinking, well, Damien Darhk is a sorcerer. I mean, he's even been referred to as such. That his powers come from magic. John Constantine knows who he is. But there's also that old saying that any sufficiently advanced science would be indistinguishable from magic. I believe that was Arthur C. Clarke, the famous scientist and sci-fi author who said that. So, wouldn't that be interesting? And then it goes back to what's happening on the island. Incidentally, did you know that the guy with the jerk mercenary with the beard, he's in that Warcraft movie that's coming out? I saw the trailer for that the other day. Oh, that looks pretty cool. Okay, it's been a while since I quit playing Warcraft, but I did have a lot of fun with that back in the day. But anywho, nothing really huge to say about what's going on the island. But, I mean, Baron Ritter does refer repeatedly to the Ancients. Now, this could be damn near anything. It could be talking about Atlantis. I mean, it was confirmed on Earth 2 Atlantis exists. But still, you kind of have to wonder if, well, maybe they're not going to lead into hinting at the New Gods. And that would be awesome. Now, the New Gods it's kind of hard to even call them science fiction just because of their sheer power level. It's like science fantasy. It's more like Star Wars than anything else. But there is, at least I'm pretty sure there is a level of magic, of like genuine magic does to some degree exist with those characters. It's just, I'm not really a huge New Gods person. Darkseid is really the only member of the New Gods characters who I really like. And I vaguely remember there being something about magic on Darkseid, the planet that Darkseid calls home, which is called Apokolips. You guys might remember this stuff from Smallville. That was a big deal in the season 10. Again, it's something that I don't think was ever touched on very much. And if it was, then I don't really recall. In fact, the only really thing involving those characters and magic that really jumps out of my mind was a one-shot that was tied to this company-wide crossover that DC did back in the 90s. We all remember those if you were reading comics back in the 90s. Most of them sucked beyond words. But this one was actually good. It was called Underworld Unleashed, and it introduced this demon named Neron into the DC universe. And he's popped up several times since then, and it's honestly very good miniseries. So they had the individual miniseries, and then they had all these tie-in comics and a couple of one-shots. It were written by Mark Waid, super talented guy, and then Howard Porter was the artist, and he was of course really well known for doing some great work on Justice League back in the day. But anyway, basically the idea is the demon Neron goes to Apokolips, and there's a whole bunch of the characters who are vying for control of the planet because they think Darkseid is dead. So him being a demon, he's basically says like, hey, give me your soul and I'll give you power. And they're all evil as heck and greedy for power, so they're like, yeah, okay. So he strikes a deal with a whole bunch of these characters, and it just sort of leads to this enormous brawl. And I don't want to spoil that story for you because it's really cool how it works out. But at the end of the day, things are a draw, and once that's established, Neron pops up again and just sort of laughs and says, today I'm the only basically says something like, today I'm the only victor. And this next line he has was so cool that I actually made it a point to memorize it. I still remember it years and years later. And he says to all these characters from Apokolips, If it is possible for such hellish creatures as yourself to be more cursed than you already are, then you most certainly are now. And then the characters are just sort of like, oh hell. And that's basically the end of it. And it's just like, oh wow. I mean, that's one of those stories where the bad guy wins, and it really, really stuck with me. But I almost always love anything that Mark Waid writes. In fact, I was actually just reading his first issue of new event of Avengers that came out today. So that's also a pretty solid book there. And yeah, I've been rambling on for about 20 minutes, so I think this is a good place to call it. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi. Until next time, take care and have a good one.